What are you proudest of in terms of legislative achievement for the people of the state of Massachusetts?
Well, sure. Just doing exactly what I said I'd do, which is to be that independent voter and thinker. I'm clearly the most bipartisan person in the entire delegation and the most, if not the most totally, in the entire United States Senate. And I think that's very important because there are plenty of ideologues down there, plenty of partisan folks, but there's very few problem solvers.
In the terminal phase of Scott Brown's short Senate career, he was billing himself as a bipartisan consensus maker in a land of partisan division. In his current iteration as a Senate candidate in the neighboring blue state of New Hampshire, he has taken up that mantle once again, which is why it looks really, really bad. He got caught red-handed blowing up an utterly uncontroversial, sensible, bipartisan compromise piece of legislation for the petty political reason he did not want his political opponent to get any credit that she could tout during the campaign. New Hampshire's Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen had a bill with Republican Senator Rob Portman that was widely supported in both the House and Senate. Even Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell admitted it, saying, quote, "It does enjoy broad bipartisan support." Supporters say the legislation was expected to create more than 190,000 jobs and save consumers $16 billion a year on energy costs by 2030. But it ended up being filibustered with some help from Scott Brown. Huffington Post reports that Brown, quote, called Senate Republican leadership to urge them to make sure that Shaheen-Portman, the Senate's energy efficiency bill, didn't pass so as not to give Shaheen something to run on. Brown reached out as recently as last week. If Scott Brown thought the Jeanne Shaheen ads touting her legislative victory on energy efficiency were going to be bad, wait until he sees the ads about him blowing the whole thing up for the pettiest of political reasons. Joining me now is Senator Bernie Sanders, independent from Vermont, and a member of the Environment and Public Works and Energy and Natural Resources Committees. And Senator, can you tell me first a little bit about this legislation that was destroyed? It struck me as not a huge deal, but sensible and good and would save energy and save money.
Chris, you're absolutely right. This was a very modest bill. This bill was supported by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, not noted to be radical environmentalists, and other business groups. But it was an important bill because everybody understands that the best way to save energy is through energy efficiency and weatherization. And as you indicated, what this bill would do is save people substantial sums of money on their fuel bills, because when you weatherize a home, you use less energy. What it would also do is create a significant number of jobs, almost 200,000 jobs, and further, it would cut greenhouse gas emissions. Sounds to me like a win-win-win situation. But the Republican Party has become such an obstructionist party, so determined to not let anything significant happen, so determined not to give Senator Shaheen a victory despite the jobs being created and the energy being saved, that they killed the bill.
This is the statement that the New Hampshire GOP put out as soon as the bill failed, right? So Republicans, Scott Brown calls around, Republicans filibuster it, and the New Hampshire GOP rushes in to say, Senator Shaheen has called Shaheen-Portman energy efficiency bill her defining legislation. But after its defeat, Senator Shaheen doesn't have a single legislative accomplishment to run on as she seeks re-election. This was just a pure political hit job. Nothing more and nothing less.
Hey, Chris, welcome to my world. I mean, that is what goes on here every single day.
But this is precisely the thing, Senator Sanders, this is precisely the thing that voters say they hate. It's precisely the thing that everyone says they hate. Why can't you guys come to some consensus? And here it is. This is why you can't, because it is to the political advantage of certain people to destroy rather than build.
I mean, it goes on and on and on. A few months ago, I presented a veterans bill which had the support of every veterans organization in the country, every major veterans organization. The Republican Party is supposed to love our veterans. I only got 2 votes, and what they brought forth was an amendment for sanctions on Iran on a veterans bill. The bottom line is that these guys made a decision a number of years ago when Obama came to office, and they said, look, everybody knows this. We are going to do everything we can to stop any legislation, and then we're going to say, what have these people accomplished? So, Democrats control the Senate. What have they done?
How do you go to the Capitol every day? Seriously, how do you wake up? How do you commute down from Vermont and go into that Capitol and talk to your colleagues and introduce bills and work on amendments and do all of the granular work of legislating when you know that that's where it's all headed? That's the conditions.
And let me tell you, very honestly, it is emotionally very, very difficult and very frustrating. You know, we look out in the world, you were discussing the need to raise the minimum wage. Everybody knows we have to do that. We can't do that. Can't extend long-term unemployment. Can't come up with a jobs program. The Shaheen bill was a good start in terms of energy efficiency. We've got to go a lot further than that in combat the crisis of climate change. We don't even have a party here in the Republican Party that acknowledges the science of climate change, let alone developing legislation to address it.
What do you think about Scott Brown's message to voters and image of himself as a bipartisan compromiser in the wake of this?
Well, I think, as you've indicated, it just undermines, you know, everything that how he defines himself. He's the great moderate. He's the great guy who brings people together. Well, in this case, he did everything that he could to prevent the Congress from the Senate from passing a modest bill. And by the way, this legislation, as I understand it, was passed with very heavy votes in the House.
Yep.
So, you know, I think it undermines his entire credibility as being a moderate who wants to bring people together.
Do you think that there will be any cost for this ultimately? I mean, in this case, right, there's a microcosm of Scott Brown. Will he pay a cost with voters as this story gets out? And I think he will. But more broadly, will Mitch McConnell pay a cost? Are there costs for this kind of thing?
Well, it really depends on how effective the Democrats are in going to grassroots America. This is my fear in terms of the coming election. The pundits tell us that 60% of the American people are not going to vote. What that means is 70 or 80% of low-income and working people who want to raise the minimum wage, who want a job, they're not going to vote. And what we have got to do is to figure out a way that we rally grassroots America, educate them about what Republican obstructionism is about, educate them about how Republicans work day and night for the big money interest. And if we can motivate people, I think we'll do fine in the election.
Senator Bernie Sanders, always a pleasure. Thank you.